In an emergency motion, the Department of Justice argues that Texas's new law prevents women's constitutional right to an abortion. The motion also requests a restraining order or preliminary injunction that prevents the enforcement of the Texas law. The emergency motion comes 1 week after the Department of Justice sued the state of Texas in an attempt to negate the ban on abortion after the discovery of a fetal heartbeat is detected. Abortion clinics across the state of Texas filed lawsuits to challenge the law, but they were unable to get past procedural barriers. This has led the Department of Justice to lean on the argument that they aim to prevent states from the denial of the recognition of citizens' constitutional rights. In part, the lawsuit reads, "It is settled constitutional law that a state may not prohibit any woman from making the ultimate decision to terminate her pregnancy before viability. But Texas has done just that." The Department of Justice's motion drew support from 24 Democratic attorney generals who have expressed concerns that Texans would be forced to travel out of state for abortions and could burden the healthcare systems. Officials in New Mexico, California, Colorado, Illinois, and Nevada have noted that this phenomenon is already occurring. Joining me to discuss is Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett and political strategist Kristal Knight. Representative Crockett, what do you make of the motion that has been filed by the Justice Department?
First of all, it's great to see you, Charles. And finally, we've got something decent coming out of Texas. I think that we are definitely in a decent position. I mean, the law is on our side. The problem is that the lawmakers, as well as the judiciary, may not be on our side. But when we go to court, we don't go to court just as individuals arguing if there is precedence, and there is precedence. It is clear that a woman has a constitutional right to choose. That was codified in some way. I guess it wasn't codified, but it's settled law that a woman does have the right to choose. So I'm excited that the federal government did get involved. It still feels a little too late because we honestly have had many opportunities to actually codify this, and we have failed to do that. And so that would have provided that additional layer of protection, because someone could say federal law specifically states that, right? But we don't have that. We just have case law interpreting a constitutional right. And so, I feel confident that we will do fine on the trial level. It gets a little hairy when you start talking about this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals here, and it's going to get even hairier by the time that we get up to the Supreme Court. But I do believe that we will have somewhat of a reprieve and have a real judge that really will try to follow the law, and that will grant us a reprieve in Texas.
Ms. Knight, as I said in the intro, other states are already seeing an increase in women coming from Texas in order to get an abortion because they don't believe they can get it in the state of Texas. How soon do you think that this may be resolved and make its way to the court and get an injunction, if an injunction is granted?
Well, I think we'll have to wait to determine and really look at the case and see when that will happen. I could never guess when that determination will be made. I only hope that it will be made expeditiously. I serve on the Planned Parenthood board in my home state of Tennessee, and what we're seeing, even in Tennessee, we're seeing an influx of people not only concerned about if they can get an abortion, a safe and legal abortion, but what we're going to see in the states surrounding the state of Texas is women running to those states, trying to figure out what their decisions are, what their options are because of this law. And really, I think your other panelists highlighted that the DOJ have stepped in, but we also have to remember that the Supreme Court had the opportunity to step in and make this a stay and not allow this law to be passed in the state of Texas, and they didn't do it. And that's when the powers that be in this country are failing women and failing women's bodies and failing our right to choose what we determine is right and best for our bodies.
Representative Crockett, it is no secret that this is largely political for your governor and many of the Republicans in the State House. The governor now has, I think, about 50% of the population in the most recent poll saying they disapprove of his handling of things. This is meant by him, along with the voting rights legislation, to shore up his conservative bona fides. How do you think this challenge will work out? This just means that he fights harder, right?
You know, he likes to double down, even if it doesn't make sense. We all know what the governor said as it relates to this bill when asked him, well, why aren't there any exceptions? Normally there's an exception. You guys didn't even do an exception. Eliminate rape, right? Like our governor like doubles down. He doesn't retract. He doesn't say, well, maybe that's something that he doesn't ever try to appear reasonable. If he is going to make a stance, he is going to die on that hill. And so, it is about his primary. He seemingly doesn't have very much to worry about in the primary. We just had some finance numbers come out. He raised $2 million in the legislative special session. No opponent that he has came anywhere near him. Not to mention he has a crazy war chest. So honestly, if the Democrats decide that they don't want to fumble the ball, then I think that we do have an opportunity, because the further to the right that he goes, the more unreasonable he is. And when it's time to deal with the general election, there is no way that he can move back to the center. That's probably contemplated by him and his team, considering the fact that they did want to pass the voting legislation. He wanted to make sure that it was going to be more difficult for those people that are economically disadvantaged and also people of color. So, obviously he's contemplating a little bit of that. I just don't think that he contemplated that there would be a fight back, because historically in Texas, they've not really had to endure a fight back. And so with this fight back, we've been able to amplify and make sure that the entire country knows some of the issues that are going on. And so Texans are aware. And so just like those far right that our base has been excited and hopefully been more excited than the far right radicals.
Ms. Knight, the shrinking of the window in which an abortion is legal in Texas is only one of the outrages of the abortion law. The other part of it is the incentivizing of average, everyday citizens with up to $10,000 for turning in people, even if they are not party to the pregnancy at all, affected by it at all, is another part of this bill. How dangerous and outrageous is that provision?
It is absolutely outrageous. It's not only outrageous, it's dangerous. We are encouraging people, or the state of Texas, this law is encouraging people to be vigilantes, to literally just go out and make quote unquote citizens arrest and tell on their neighbor, or as the streets would say, snitch on people. And when you do that, you run the course of, a state legislative body creating laws that are literally just, counter to what you're trying to do in the first place. So what if there were laws in the books that allowed us to, report someone that we know who has a history of mental health, that they have a gun in their house? Where does it end when you begin to give citizens the right to just tell on someone, arrest them, and even be paid? We've seen that poverty in this country is at an all-time high, and people are willing to do anything for not only $10,000, but $100. And so this is very dangerous, because it incentivizes people to not only tell on their neighbor, but it also is putting the control of a woman's body in the hands of a person who has absolutely nothing to do with it. And so the question really should be, why does this law exist? And why is this provision even written into the law, where someone is able, who absolutely knows nothing about a woman, her situation, anything that's happened, to report her to whoever the would-be authorities would be for this bill? And then if it turns out that it's true, that person then receives an incentive for saying that this woman went to receive an abortion. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm just curious, like, why does this provision in this bill even exist? And where does it end? If we start here, we can begin this trend with a number of different issues in this country.
Representative Jasmine Crockett and Kristal Knight, thank you so much for joining us tonight. More Pride after the break.